Dr. Jazz.
So many albums. So I
Dr.
was
Oh,
like,
Jazz.
man,
really?
I've been a fan for such a long time since the Eubanks stuff came out, and like that was 1990 something. So, but
Too far back.
no, so I listened to Spirit Talk too yesterday, and
Oh, really?
yeah, it still sounds so good, man. It's just like,
I have to go back and check that out.
yeah, like the drumming there, and I mean the whole album. I like that album. So, but
Yeah.
I wanted to start like asking you about Japan. You've been in Japan now for quite some time, and
Yeah.
how would what's the scene? I mean, I know like U.S. jazz musicians have been coming to Japan for years, for decades, but your view on the current jazz scene in Japan, I mean,
hmm
what's the situation there, like playing wise, especially after COVID?
You know, Japan is really has a small scene. I guess I shouldn't say small scene because it's more active than most places.
Mm,
There's so many clubs and there's so many musicians and you know, uh, you know, before COVID, it was a lot of activity going on, but after COVID, it slowed down quite a bit, and
mm,
uh, a lot of the clubs that had gigs, they would either go to like only doing one set
mm.
or doing it very early, and then the pay is, of course, not enough people coming out, so the pay was dramatically less. And, but now things are picking up,
Mm.
you know, and it's trying to go in the right direction. It
Yeah,
seems like it.
yeah,
Uh, you know, everybody's anxious to get back to normal if there's a normal.
yeah. After this, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, you still go to the States now, every now and then? I mean, for gigs and
Before Corona, I had my apartment in New York, which
mm.
I kept, and I was renting it out with Airbnb, and I was going back
Oh, okay.
to this every year for like 2 months. But uh, right before COVID, New York State or New York City changed their rules about Airbnb,
Oh, really?
and
Mm.
such that my building was not what I was doing turned into being illegal.
Mm.
Changed the rules, so I had to abandon that apartment, and so I put my equipment and stuff in my apartment. I have a place that I own with my ex-wife and my
Yeah.
daughter and my ex-wife. So that apartment, it's actually a building, but one of the apartments which my daughter's living in, I put my stuff there. So I have a place I can go to
Okay,
and
that's good. Yeah.
come back, but it's been a little difficult with the exchange rate and also the COVID policies in Japan. Like I
Mm.
could have gone, but coming back like
Oh,
a
it's really
little bit
strict.
difficult. But now it's Japan is changing their COVID rules, and
Yeah.
so it's more possible. But right at the moment, I don't have any plans to
Mm.
come to the States.
Yeah. But okay, at least,
At the moment.
that you have a place there, and that's connections can, still you can do stuff. I think that's a good one. So I guess,
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, I wanted to, I mentioned Spirit Talk, and I wanted to ask you, like, when I listen to your drumming there, it's like the tunes are really heavy, but like you've developed like quite a language there already, like being you know. But I hear like Elvin, or I don't know, Tony Williams, or probably Roy Haynes. I guess I'm missing someone out, but like, who were like the drummers? Like, let's say, I guess mid '70s.
The people that you named, Roy Haynes, Elvin, of course, Tony Williams, Billy Higgins. All of those guys were my influences. But out of the younger musicians, because at Berkeley, I was at Berkeley with Tane, Jeff Watts, and Marvin Smitty Smith.
Oh, really? Oh,
Timmy
shit!
Black.
Wow.
We was all at Berkeley together, and so actually, me and Smitty was roommates. I moved out of the dorm with Branford Marcellus, and when Branford started to get calls for New York, he moved to New York, and then Smitty moved in as a roommate. But we really weren't that tight. But I would hear Smitty practicing. I would go to the toilet like 3 in the morning, and Smitty would be in his room practicing. I was like, man, this guy is crazy. Who is this guy? If I was smart, I would have said, oh yeah, I should do the same thing. But of course, I went back to sleep. But I got called to do a gig with Kevin Eubanks because I was recommended by this vocalist Lenora Helm and also Jeff Watts. They recommended me to Kevin Eubanks, even though Kevin was from my hometown. I didn't really know him personally. So, and at that time, the main drummer for Kevin was Smitty. Smitty had did a bunch of him and Tommy Campbell. So, and Tommy was definitely one of when I first got to Berkeley, he was the one of the guys on the scene that I went to check out, and I was blown away. And at that time, and I thought I was listening to jazz. He was playing a lot of fusion stuff, but to me it was jazz. But when me and Branford were roommates, Branford was like, "Oh, that's not jazz, man. That's some fusion." And I was like, "What are you talking about, man? It's some great stuff." And he was like, "No, that's fusion, man. Blah blah blah." So I was kind of confused for a minute, but then I, because of some other events, I don't. I mean, we could talk about it, but some other events really pushed me to really focus on my jazz playing because of that apartment that I was living in with Branford. So, I can tell you the story. It's
please, yeah, please.
So that apartment, when Branford was there, a lot of people would come by. Terry Lynn Carrington would come by sometimes. Bill Easley, James Williams. So, there's a lot of people coming by, and everybody was very cool. And but Donald Harrison was coming by too, because that's Bradford's homeboy. But when Donald came by, he actually treated me like I didn't exist. At least that's the way I perceived his action to me. It's almost like I was wallpaper, and that really burned me up. I was like, really, it's like, who is this guy think he is? And at the time, he had a jazz club that we all learned a lot at, jazz club called Wally's.
Yeah,
he made a session there on the weekends. So my objective, after being pissed off by Donald's attitude toward me, was to go in the practice room. And when I did go in the practice room, all I could see was his face. And my objective was to get my, at the time I was playing fusion. I thought I was playing jazz, but my objective was to get my ting-ting-a-ding, 2 and 4 and a hi-hat, all that together, mixed with the other type of playing that I was already doing, and I was going to get my thing together and go down to Wally's, the jam session, and try to kill him, musically kill him. So in my practice, like I said, I would see his face and hours and hours and hours. This like I must show this guy. And then when I was able to do my the fusion stuff that I had and do keep 2 and 4 on a hi-hat and ting ting a ding. Once I was able to coordinate everything, I said, okay, I'm ready. So I went down to Donald's jam session and I asked him if I could sit in. He said, sure. So when I was called to sit in, everything that I had, I just tried to throw it at him. And he was playing, and he was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. So after that, he treated me like everybody else, and he asked me to play his recital and come out house, blah, blah, blah. But before that, it was my perception of how he treated me was completely different. So that gave me a push to really try to get some type of jazz playing under my belt. And looking back, it's a funny story, but it was like a good kind of intimidation, which I guess in college you need that kind of inspiration, even though it could be rooted in negative attitudes, but it ended up helping me become the drummer that I am today. So funny story.
That's a good one, actually. Yeah, that's important. It's like all the classic stories go back with Parker already, like.
Yeah, it's looking, at the time I didn't think of it as anything like that. I was just pissed off. But now, over the years, when I look back, I was like, wow, that was a really significant situation, which I'm grateful for, So, and I tell my students, when I make reference to certain things that I think that they should focus on, I refer to that story, which, now has become a great story that I could pass like an old man, like an old musician. Hey, young man, when I was your age, that kind of stuff.
But how did you decide to go to Berkeley? What was the main reason? I mean, like, who pushed you, or what was the
high school I went to in Philly was West Philadelphia High School, and it was had a pretty good music, kind of a good music school, and we always had competitions with this other high school called Overbrook, which is also in Philadelphia too, and we always had this rivalry, and we had Battle of the Bands, and their program was pretty, pretty serious. They had a real program too. So some of the musicians, some of my elder musicians at West Philly High went to Berkeley, and one guy, Lawrence Jones in particular, who was a flautist, he now lives in UK. He went to Berkeley and like, yeah, Berkeley's great. You young, musicians should check it out. So it became one of the places that all aspired to go to because of the one person at the school who went. So that's how I was inspired to go. Of course I was inspired to pursue music, but when we got the information about Berkeley, it seemed like the perfect place to expand my music, which I thought I was playing jazz, but I wasn't. I was playing fusion. So
interesting, yeah. But when did you then move to New York? That was like mid-80s, or?
So I moved to New York in 87, I think it was.
Oh, okay. Was that transition heavy for you, or like did you already have the gig with Kevin then, or?
Yeah, I had the gig with Kevin, and I was working also in the Boston area doing all sorts of gigs, and you know, I was hesitant to move to New York just because I had this image of New York that was, a little bit kind of not the place I wanted to go, even
Mm,
though everybody knew that's the next step. So I was hesitant,
mm,
but my ex roommates, Bradford and Smitty, and a bunch of other people that Natane and good friends of mine had moved to New York, and I started to see them in the magazines. They started to appear in the magazines. All my friends from Boston,
mm.
became like the young lions of the scene at the time. So it was inspirational to see them in the magazines, and it became clear at one point while I was still living in Boston that it was time for me to leave Boston because
Mm.
stuff started to just hit the fan in every area. You
Yeah,
know, I got these parking tickets and just everything. They towed my car. It was a lot of things that it became clear it was time to get out of Boston.
Boston. Yeah. Was it hard for you, entering? If you look back now at the New York scene at the mid '80s when you came there, like '87. You mentioned all these drummers already. Like Thane and Smitty and so many others already established on the scene.
Yeah.
Like, how was it for you as a drummer entering the scene back then?
Well, because I came with a gig with Kevin
Kevin,
Eubanks
yeah,
gig, it was it was compared to other people, it was easy. And then
mm,
that was the boom of the Young Lions movement. So Kevin
yeah,
was working a bunch of times. I was subbing for Tane because all
okay,
of my colleagues from Boston became the young cats on the scene in New York. So because of that, a lot of gigs was referred to different gigs, and then some of my other colleagues, we was hanging together, guys that we went to Berkeley together. We hung together and
mm,
go to sessions together, and you know, one thing led to the next. It was a lot of activity going on, and at the time, like I said, the Young Lions movement was like in full effect.
yeah,
So the people that I was around were the people that were doing the gigs, and
yeah,
I happened, and Robin Eubanks started Robin Eubanks, and then you know a lot of different gigs that I do some little gigs, and then somebody else heard about me, and
yeah,
then they would refer me to another gig, and it started like that. But I came there luckily with Kevin Eubanks gig, which he was touring a lot at that time. So
yeah,
it, it was it was a blessing, and I was staying with a friend, another great drummer, Dwayne Cook Broadnax. He had an apartment. He went to Berkeley too, and me and Cook, uh, we went to the same high school
mm,
and came to Boston together. So he moved to New York before me. He had an apartment which a lot of the guys, I think Tane used to live there, and a bunch of other musicians that were like a little bit before me
yeah,
came to the apartment. So I was supposed to uh, only stay at my friend Cook's house for like a couple of weeks until uh, my apartment that I was supposed to get. I was waiting for that to come through, but it didn't come through. So I ended up living there for like 2 years on the couch.
yeah,
It was only supposed to be 2 weeks, ended up 2 years. But luckily, I was working a lot. I was touring a lot, so it everything worked out. And
yeah,
also the support group. A lot of the musicians, Branford and a bunch of guys, Greg Osby, Terry
Mm.
Carrington,
Yeah.
we all lived in the same neighborhood in Fort Greene. So it was a community, and
Yeah.
we Terrence Blanchard was there too, and
Mm.
Donald Harrison, just a bunch of guys from Berkeley, and we supported each other, and
Yeah.
the networking branched off from that original family of musicians from Berkeley. So
Yeah. That's so important. Yeah.
so it was lucky. It was a lucky period for me.
Mm. Was it with Kevin also? You went to Europe for the first time?
Yeah, Kevin was the first person I went to Europe with.
How was that like for you? Like, as a young
So
jazz
I
musician
was
touring.
blown away because I think the first gig I did with him outside of the States was in Paris.
Mm.
And I think the
Wow.
place was called Theater Balloon or something like that. Theater Balloon. And my first impression of Paris was I was just blown away by the architecture
Mm.
and the vibe. But then the other cities that we went to in I think on that tour, I would reference Paris. I would always say, "Yeah, this city looks like Paris. It reminds me of Paris." So, Kevin was always laughing. He had already been to Europe many, many times, and he was like, "Yeah, you sound like a rookie." Because it was fresh for me,
Sure.
so I was completely traumatized by I was culture shock,
Yeah, definitely. And also still 80s, it was different. The EU was not there.
Yeah,
The currencies like
yeah,
lira in Italy, Deutschmarks in Germany. It was quite
yeah.
different time, I guess, than now.
A
And now,
lot of wasted change,
yeah,
from the exchange.
bizarre. But speaking of touring, I wanted to ask you about, watched a lot of footage on YouTube of you with Herbie, and there's like from
Yeah,
Jazz of Vienna, there's like this amazing drum solo uh, that you play, and
yeah.
how did you become part of his trio and quartet actually also, and how was, I mean, that must have been like a dream. Like, did you receive a call from him or his
Yeah,
manager, or like?
no, so how that worked, like I said, we go back to that apartment I had with
Ah.
Branford. So that Branford, and this is my the way when I reflect on everything, this is my perception of what happened. So, uh, like I said, Branford, many people came by. Terry Lynn Carrington used to come by all the time. Also, I was playing with her father, Sonny Carrington, off and on. So I always had a great respect for Terry Lynn, not just as a female drummer. I didn't really see her like that. I saw her as a great drummer and musician. And I think she sensed that I looked at her like that. I didn't look at her like, oh, because some of my colleagues, would kind of refer to her as like, yeah, she's getting a lot of, you know, a lot of recognition because she's a woman,
Yeah.
and I was like, I don't think so, and also because it was a little different situation. She gave me some information that helped me, and then also one time I went to see Philly Joe Jones, and Philly Joe was playing at the Hasty Pudding Club, and Philly Joe was there with Walter Davis and Walter Booker, and Philly saw Terry and said, "Oh, Terry, come up, sit in." So he called Terry Lynn. This is Philly Joe Jones. He called Terry Lynn to sit in with Walter Davis, Walter Booker, and they played like rhythm changes really fast.
Okay.
And Terry got up there. She got up there and she killed it. And I was like, see, That's why she's a great musician. It's not about her being a woman or whatever. She's a great musician, and that's So I'm right. So I wasn't thinking about doing that as a perk or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just that's how I perceived her. So years later, um, you know, I get a call from. So she used to be when we all moved to Brooklyn. Her and Greg Osby had an apartment together in Fort Greene, near where I lived too.
Mm.
So, like I said, we were all like a family. So Greg Osby, I do gigs with him, but Terry Lynn was roommates. But Terry Lynn, I think, had went out to LA to do a bunch of gigs and stuff like that with different people, and I think she was moving to LA, or she might have moved already, but she had a tour that she was supposed to do with Herbie and Wayne, but she got, I guess, a conflict.
Yeah.
So she had another tour that got off with. So she recommended me, out of all people, because I think maybe because she appreciated the fact that I always treated her as a musician. Respect for her wasn't based off of because she was a woman, and then also she knew that I played many different styles too. So, and I think maybe at that point, what Herbie and Wayne was looking for, I fit the bill for that. So she recommended me for that. But I got the call is she gave Wayne Shorter Greg Osby's phone number because she knew Greg and I was tight. So Greg calls me up and plays on his answering machine, hey Gene, check this out. And it was Wayne Shorter calling Greg Osby, saying, hey Greg, this is Wayne Shorter, man. I'm trying to get Gene Jackson's phone number, blah, blah, blah. It's like, what? So I was in shock. So Wayne called me finally, and he asked me to send him a tape. Back then, that's when we had cassette tapes. So I put together a tape. But before I put the tape together, I asked him, I said, what type of material do you want? Because I tried to play a very vast amount of different styles, He said, yeah, make it, all of it. So I made a tape with some demos that I did with different people, ranging from some fusion stuff to a lot of jazz stuff, and just bits and bits of other types of music that might represent what I could do. So I didn't really think that I would get a call back, because at that moment I was thinking of many other drummers that I would like to see with Herbie and Wayne, like Ron Peterson, Tane, Ronnie Barrage.
Oh yeah.
I was seeing these people, my friends and guys that I looked up to. Many. It was like a long list of drummers that I saw before myself. I would, I just figured like, okay, I got the call, so it's my duty to make the tape and send it. But I'm honored that I got the call, but I doubt they call me back. I sent the tape, and I didn't really didn't expect a call back. But like 2 weeks later, I checked my answering machine and it's like, hey Gene, this is Wayne. I got the tape and I like what I hear. You got the gig. I'm like, what?
Wow.
I really could not believe it. I was like in shock. Like, is that come out to LA for rehearsals and blah, 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 and the tour starts? Something. I was just like, I was flabbergasted. I really did not expect that because, like I said, it was at least 100 guys that I looked up to, my colleagues that I wanted to see them play with Herbie and them. So when I got that call, I said, wow, okay, if that's what you want, I'll do my best, but that's how I got the call.
How was that rehearsal like in the first gigs? I mean, how...
The rehearsal was really interesting because went out to L.A. Herbie and Wayne, and had some bottles of champagne and basically a lot of talking. A lot of talking, and we played a few songs, and it was really like really relaxed and cool. Like really, they really made me feel comfortable. Like,
Mm.
man, these guys are so cool. And Bunny Brunel was the bassist
Oh,
on
okay.
that first tour. He was basically a super great electric player, but
Yeah.
he played acoustic bass on this tour. So um, I did the rehearsal, and then we went to do the tour. And the very first gig was a big theater in Italy.
Mm.
Like actually, I have a picture on my wall. Oh, where is it at? The picture fell down. Hold up, let
Oh
me
yeah, sure,
find.
sure. Oh, sure.
I heard something fall earlier. Well, I can't find the picture. It fell around here somewhere. It was on the wall that I keep as a.
Oh yeah, sure.
But anyway, that first concert was at this theater in Italy, and we go on stage, and at the moment they announce, ladies and gentlemen, the Herbie Hancock Wayne Shorter Quartet. So at that moment, it hit me. It's like, what? Like I literally, this is no joke. I had like a split second to adjust to the reality. Up to that point,
Sure.
I didn't really, I didn't like, I knew I had the gig, but it didn't hit me until I heard this announcer say, ladies and gentlemen, the Herbie Hancock Wayne Shorter Quartet, and there's thousands of people in this theater, and I'm supposed to walk on stage with Herbie and Wayne Shorter. I was like, so in a split second, I had to make up my mind that okay, he called me for this. They called me for this gig. I don't know why they called me for the gig, but it must be some kind of reason. And all I could do at this point, I have to. I can't run away. I have to
Mm.
go out there. With split second, all this is going on in my mind. I said, okay, I have to accept the fact that they called me for the gig. That means that it's something that they heard that
Yeah.
I can offer them in the music. So all I can do is the best I can do. That's all I can do. So if I do the best I can do, then whether I fail or not, it doesn't really matter. That's all I could do. And I'm thinking about all these other people that I was thinking would be better for the gig, but I was like, okay, I can't think about that. I just have to think,
Mm.
okay, when I'm going on the stage with Herbie Hancock and Wayne Shorter, I just have to do the best that I can do, and that has to be good enough. And if it's not, as long as I'm doing the best that I can do, then that
Mm.
means that I did what I can do. So split second, I came to that reality, and then went on stage and did the best that I could do. And then
Mm.
we did the tour, and he called me back, you know, for his trio. So I didn't take any of it for granted at any
Yeah.
point. Even after years of working with Herbie, I didn't take it for granted. And my attitude was like, if after this first gig, if they don't call me back again in life, I'm satisfied because
Sure.
to get this opportunity to go on stage with Herbie Hancock and Wayne Shorter, it's like, you
Yeah.
know, I was completely, gratified and I split second, I had a reality check that made me uh, made it possible for me to go on stage and try to do the best that I could do with these giants,
Yeah.
these jazz. And apparently, it was enough for Herbie to call me back to join his trio and quartet. So
Yeah. Speaking of Herbie, I wanted to ask you, that group never recorded, right? I mean, I have one bootleg from '94, like when you play "I Love You" and "One Finger Snap," and
yeah, that's
but
yeah. So that the bootleg that's all there is, But Herbie recorded every night. He took out the recording equipment and stuff.
oh,
But
really?
yeah, because at the time too, the record companies uh, and I was a no name, and they were more or less trying to like
Yeah.
the new standards. When the new standards came out, basically we was playing that material first, and
Oh, really? Oh, wow. Okay.
the record companies, of course, they wanted the names, the big names, and Dave was in the band, but they basically Jack and Pat, like Gene Jackson, Candy,
Yeah, but
so
it's such a
yeah,
killing
and
group, man. Yeah.
but the bootleg, I refer to that bootleg, because I mean it's there. I even at one point, told Herbie, yeah, I'm gonna have to use this as in my resume. He said, "Hear no evil, speak no evil, see no evil." So,
But how are those tours like with Wayne and Herbie? It's like, when you do this normal tours, when we tour, like we play, I don't know, jazz clubs and play for 80 people, sleep in
yeah.
like, normal hotels or whatever, like, and then you do this jazz royalty tour. Like, how was that?
Yeah,
I mean,
it was, we was flying. Of course, Herbie and Wayne was first class, but the band was business class. We stayed at, the top rate hotels, suites, and this incredible treatment everywhere, and it was just, and then when I joined Herbie, it continued. So
yeah.
all of those years, I got used to that type of, accommodations. So when I stopped working with Herbie, it took some years for me to
Sure.
used to normal, And I go to the airport, I was like, at the counter, I was like, no, you don't understand. I'm not supposed to be in economy. I'm supposed to be in business class. This you have to bump me up. They just look at me like I was crazy. I was like, no, for real.
Shit. Yeah, that's a heavy transition then.
Yeah, it was really hard.
But you played then also with Dave, right? On bass as part of
Yeah,
Herbie's band, and
yeah,
the Dave is like, how was it like playing? I mean, I know, I guess through that connection you joined Dave's band, right?
yeah. Because we were at the same time we was me and Dave was playing with Herbie, and then I was working with Dave's band at the same time. And then
How
at
did
some
how did
point,
that work? Like at the same.
when we didn't have tours with Herbie, we was touring with Dave.
Wow.
But then it got to the point Dave wanted to focus more on his band, so basically he was like, he had to make a choice, So I recommended my buddy Billy Kilson.
Yeah.
And also I recommended Billy at that time because a lot of people, when they would talk about Billy, they would say, "Oh yeah, he's a funk drummer or this and that." And I was like, "No," I said, Billy Kilson is a complete drummer. He's my friend and inspiration, but he's a great drummer. He can deal with whatever you throw in front of him. So
Yeah.
it was like, really? So when I was really happy to recommend him to Dave's band because I knew he would just kill it. I just knew it, and so I was just happy to hear, when he called. But actually, the way it went down with Dave, he didn't. I recommended Billy to sub for me on some gigs, but Dave basically the way he fired me was kind of, kind of. I found out through the internet basically that I wasn't doing the tour anymore.
Oh
So,
shit.
but
Oh man, that's okay.
but it was, and we've been all over the world together, and I've seen David, as family,
Yeah.
But I guess he had a problem with being direct with somebody. So Robin Eubanks, I was working with a lot. He was hoping that I was going to be on the tour together. He said, "Gene, you're not on the tour," because he was going to be doing the tour with Dave, and he said, "You're not on the tour." I said, "I don't know." He said, "You should check the website," and I went to the website. I said, I guess
Oh
not.
shit, man. Yeah. Wow.
But
Okay.
I was disappointed, but at the same time, I was really happy that Billy was doing it because I knew people will be able to hear my boy for what he has to offer, and then
Yeah.
I was just really happy about that. Really excited to I was just waiting, like, yeah, now
Yeah. He
watch.
nailed it. Yeah. He killed that one. Yeah.
Killed
Like,
it, and plus,
yeah. Yeah.
so I was happy about that. So it was, and I still was working with Herbie, so it wasn't like
Yeah.
the biggest part was just the way that I found out was kind of like, but I guess in the jazz scene, this is how that's how it is, you grow up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't take it personal. It's just, and then also I was kind of holding a grudge against Dave because of the way it happened. But then somebody told me, man, holding a grudge is like you taking the poison and waiting for the other person to die. And when they told me that, I was like, that's right. So I was able to let the shit go. And Dave, I still look at Dave as family, and you know, don't have any grudges or anything like that.
Yeah, still part. I mean, that Dream of the Elders, man. That's still like that's such a killing album. How you play that music,
I can't listen to it because we recorded that before the tour. Usually people do a tour first and then they record, but we recorded before the tour, and then after the tour the music
it's different.
developed, and I felt better about my playing on some of those compositions. So when I listened to the record, I kind of like cringe, and I haven't listened to it in years, but maybe a couple of years ago, I happened to just put on a little bit. I was like, yeah,
Really? Oh wow, shit. Okay.
cut that shit off. But anyway, I'm still grateful to have had the opportunity, and like I said, Dave is I look at him as family, and all the stuff we went through on the road with Herbie and his band, and on the tour buses and stuff. He's always family. So
yeah, interesting.
Nothing but gratitude.
I wanted to ask you about you played with Kevin and Dave. Let's say lots of odd meters, right? And I mean, when I listen to all of you guys, like I also talked to Billy Kilson about that, and including you make it sound so fluent and natural, especially when playing with Dave. Dave is like this really fluid bass player. It's like one is sometimes not really there,
right.
How did you get used to that, and how did you train yourself to do that? I mean, I know you said you started as a fusion drummer, maybe that helped, I guess, but like, what was your approach there when playing?
It didn't help. So how it did help is when I started working with Kevin Eubanks. Kevin didn't play anything in 4/4, and I wasn't really used to playing in so-called odd meter music.
Yeah.
So Kevin, everything was like that, because Kevin would play with Sam Rivers and Dave Holland and all these people. It was nothing, like I said, it was in full force. So every time I played in Kevin's situation, my brain felt like it was being ripped apart. And that is really like a hard thing for me. So I had to create like these practice techniques that helped me to feel more free. So I had a sampler, like when the first samplers came out, a Kai 900 or whatever. So Branford, like talking about the family, Branford was the start, and he went to Japan, did a big tour, and that's when Japan was in the bubble. He came, Akai gave him like 10 samplers, whatever. He had all these samplers. So I went over his house, like, man, let me borrow this. So I borrowed one of his samplers of the many that he got for free from Akai when he went to Japan. So I was using a sampler, and that sampler only had a floppy disk, which you could only sample like a few bars or whatever. So I would, like the odd meter music, I would sample the sections and loop it. And then I just first start practicing playing along with it, with the loop. And then I would practice playing against the loop, and then I would also practice playing in another time, completely unrelated time, but keeping reference to the actual time that was on the loop. And I started that kind of practice. That helped me relatively enough to be able to deal. And then also I got advice from some people. It was like, whatever you do, don't play the downbeat. Don't play the downbeat every bar. I mean, and stuff like that. So it gave me some type of understanding of how I should approach. And then also, like I said, my Smitty was on a lot of the recordings of the music I had to learn with Kevin. And Smitty playing on all of that stuff. So I had to listen to his plan, and he just, so some of that shit got into my plan. And no matter how much I was trying not to listen to Smitty, it was impossible, because all this material I had to learn was him, and I had no other reference for that type of material to approach. So his approach ended up influencing my approach. And then also Kane, who's a good friend of mine, his approach was very similar in concept to what I was hearing, So it got to the point where I purposely did not listen to anything that Tane played on, because it was too similar to what I was thinking. I was like, wow, and it's because during that period, people our age, we listen to the same drummers. It's like the fusion drummers: Billy Cobham, Narda, Michael Walden, Tony Wheat, and those type of drummers, and then the jazz. Then that's who we listened to first, and then we became, we discovered jazz. So during that period, we all had the same influences. So the approaches, our heroes were all pretty much the same heroes. So a lot of the same approaches was whether we wanted it to be or not was there. But that's how that's how I got influenced to try to deal with the so-called odd meter music from from these type of situations.
Mhm. Yeah, all of you guys make it sound so effortless. Also when you listen to Smitty, when I first heard him, with Steve Coleman and the
Yeah,
80s Dave Holland stuff, it's just like, man, you must have like six
yeah.
arms or something. It's just like,
So I mean, even I went to a couple of the gigs, and before that, I had no other. I mean, of course, Cobham and those
yeah,
guys, but
sure,
I didn't like the stuff that Steve Coleman and Kevin, and it was a little different. It was a
yeah,
lot different. It was fusiony, but it was jazz. So the only person that I had referenced doing that on a high level was Smitty, and
yeah,
then Tane, and so it was nobody else that I knew that was approaching that. So that influence, it was unavoidable. It's like no other way to uh, to grasp what was going on
yeah.
at that moment. So
Interesting. Yeah, yeah. It's so
yeah,
important what you guys did. I think drumming wise, So that's yeah. But I wanted to ask you about this other aspect. You mentioned that Donald Harrison story about the swing, and I was so
yeah,
happy when Power of Love came out a couple of years ago with my man Carlo on bass.
yeah.
I played with Carlo sometime,
Oh yeah, Carlo.
and it's such a swinging record, and you're like really swinging, like that Great River and all those tunes. I think it starts Great River is the first one, and like how did you decide to do that trio? And because it's like kind of your debut as a band leader, and
Yeah.
what was the story behind it? What led you to that one?
Well, so at the time, I still had my apartment. I had a loft in Brooklyn, and I had a Pro Tools set up there, and I used to have sessions all the time, at that place. People. And Gabriel Guerrero was one of the guys that would do some sessions with me, but it was a bunch of people and Carlo a few times. But uh, when I decided to do the record, like I also for many years because of my work with Michelle Rosewoman,
Hmm.
uh, the Afro-Cuban influence is
Yeah,
deep in my playing, and but not from like the traditional, you know, uh, the way
yeah,
people
yeah,
Afro-Cuban music. So I have, I was mentored by this great percussionist Eddie Bobet, who recently died, and being exposed to the Afro-Cuban music from the Bata and from Michelle's music, who she didn't write Montunos.
yeah,
Her music is based off of the toca, the Bata, the music of the Bata in different patterns. So it's not really like the traditional Afro-Cuban stuff. So, that really hit me in the core of my plan. So when I met Gabrielle, Gabrielle doesn't really like to focus on the, the Latin part of. He's a complete musician, so he likes to have that in focus, not just this. Yeah, I'm a Latino
yeah,
piano player. He's a great, world class, great musician. So when we play together, of course, I want to try to dabble into some Afro Latin stuff, but and he wants to basically do the jazz stuff. So it's like I want to do the Latin stuff, he wants to do jazz. So we would always do a combination of things in the sessions that we would do at my place, and different bass players and Carlo, whenever he would do it, it would always be great. So when I decided to do the CD, it was it was perfect for me because Gabrielle is you know, like the perfect piano player for me, and that's that. He's not just a jazz pianist, but he also has a deep knowledge of the music of the Afro Caribbean music, and it's because he's from that, so he's from Colombia, so that was really important for me to play with person that had that kind of diversity. And then Carlo is a very versatile, great bassist. His mind is very flexible, and he can go in many directions. So for me, it was like the perfect combination. Yeah. So we did my tunes, Carlos' tune, and Gabriel's tunes, and a couple of standards, and so that was the perfect situation for what I was, thinking about in terms of doing my first. It encompassed all of the things that mean a lot to me. So,
did you already lead bands before that one, or like as a band leader?
Not technically, not really. I was basically all sideman. So, of course, I did a couple of gigs on my own, but I didn't. I wasn't thinking as a leader because after being sideman for so many years, I had come to the conclusion I didn't want to be a leader. Too much headache.
But you still have aspirations to do that, like band leading?
I have a trio here that we work frequently, and I do some quartet things here and various situations. So now I do lead my own trio and quartet, various different projects with different instrumentation. So now it's normal for me now. I'm not thinking like now it's just another creative
output
expression and I enjoy it. But also I'm not thinking about I want to do this to put out a new record or just get a record deal. It's just for on the spot. Certain gigs have a conceptual, creative idea that I like to do for that moment. But the trio that I have, these members, I like to keep the same members because nowadays, everybody's always changing people. So for me, keeping the same members and having those members grow musically together is really important to me. So I've been, even like with Gabriel and Carlo, when I come back to New York, of course I'm gonna call them if they're. But here I have a trio with this great pianist Mayuko Katakura and bass player Patrick Glenn, who's from the States, and we've been playing together, at least 8, 9 years.
Oh, nice. Yeah. You still write music? I mean.
Yeah. I can't even play my own music, but of course. I'm writing, and I'm doing arrangements and stuff like that. I have some arrangements that I do in my groups and other people's bands.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. Gene, just one last question, like then I'll leave you a nice evening in Tokyo. But you did, I have you on this one record with John Abercrombie and Eddie Gomez, and
oh yeah,
how did that one happen? Like, what's the story behind there?
So let me see. So at the time, I was doing different gigs with my man on bass, and I think we were doing a lot of gigs together, and that came up. The guy from the record company, the audiophile guy, wanted us to record. So,
no, yeah.
So that's how that just happened. And
So it was just a session, basically, or kind of.
yeah, this was an audiophile session that was recorded at a church, and that record company that his target is, I guess, basically audiophiles.
Yeah.
So he records super high end audio equipment. So that we recorded in a church, and this microphone was this high end single microphone, one microphone.
Wow.
In the middle of the room, and there was maybe one other mic in for the ambiance, but there was this high-end not digital, but high-end microphone that was. We were around that in the church in Chelsea.
Wow.
So, and that around that time I was working a lot with Eddie. We did a bunch of gigs, and I think Eddie must have got me on that
one
session, yeah, because we was doing a bunch of stuff with another piano player. I forgot his name, my homeboy, but around that time, Eddie was calling me for stuff. Why, I don't know.
Come on.
Great basis, and I really enjoyed every opportunity to play with Eddie.
Yeah, it's amazing. I checked the records I have you on, and just the bass players you played with.
Yeah.
It's just like everyone,
And
amazing.
I really feel fortunate to have had the opportunity to play with these.
It's beautiful.
And a few years ago, I did a thing here in Japan. Blue Note Club, they had a 50th Blue Note anniversary, and Ron Carter. It was my first chance to play with Ron.
Ooh, how was that like, man?
God, I came in my pants several times. It was really.
Oh shit!
Such a joy, man.
That's beautiful.
Feel that groove, man. That's it. I'm done.
Yeah, Ron, Wayne, and Herbie. Come on, that's like. That's.
Yeah, if I would have played with Ron, with Herbie and Wayne, I think I would have.
Oh man.
Probably snapped.
Yeah, that's it then. That's over then. It's like, okay, I did it. Check. Yeah. But beautiful, man. Gene, thanks so much for sharing some of these stories. Really inspiring to hear.
No problem.
Dr. Jazz.